Russia is not doing that. They're not attacking Christianity. As a matter of fact, they seem to be protecting it. So that's something else that's clear and obvious to many people that are looking closely at what's going on.
This week on Christian World News, Russian soldiers are shutting down churches and persecuting evangelicals. These Ukrainian Christians are sounding the alarm on Vladimir Putin's assault on religious freedom.
Russia is not doing that. They're not attacking Christianity. As a matter of fact, they seem to be protecting it. So that's something else that's clear and obvious to many people that are looking closely at what's going on.
Russia first occupied the southern Ukrainian city of Melitopol in early March 2022. And Russian secret services, after persecuting pro-Ukrainian activists, former government officials, and human rights defenders, have since targeted the churches and their pastors and congregants.
I got to be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
All across Russian-occupied Ukraine, soldiers are shutting down places of worship that don't fit the world Vladimir Putin wants to build.
I got to be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
Subject of Russia and Ukraine, because you really also have come out in support of the Christians in Ukraine. Can you talk, because I think sometimes we're a little bit, we can be confused, maybe as there's a lot of disinformation out there and it's just a confusing situation. What is the state of Christians in Ukraine and how Russia's authoritarianism and aggression against Ukraine is harming them?
They're targeted, specifically. I've met with multiple times with religious leaders, pastors who are there, some of my own denomination, Southern Baptists, have missionaries there, and a lot of these clergy are in fear for their own families, and some of them have been targeted. I mean, I've seen examples and photographs of families who were taken out by targeted rockets to their apartment building on, level 5 of an apartment building because they are Christians. I mentioned earlier the importance of maintaining religious freedom is, if you can, and the communists always do this, they go after the Christians first. They target Christians. Why? Because they believe they owe an allegiance to a power higher than the government, than the state, right? And so you have to eliminate that, and then it's a demonic thing in my view, but they target people who have that belief and they want to stamp it out. And it's vicious and vile, and it shows exactly what Putin and his regime is all about. And I think it's an important thing to highlight. And I don't think it's something that ought to be underestimated.
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Why do I care? Tell you why. And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
This week on Christian World News, the Russian pastor who's a wanted man because he publicly opposed the war in Ukraine. Hear how he escaped just as Russian security officials raided his home.
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Why do I care? And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Even publicly praying or calling for peace also poses risks of prosecution.
If you are not loyal, then there is no place for you in church.
Just ask Reverend Iona Koval. Last September, when Russia's president ordered a partial mobilization of reservists, the head of Russia's Orthodox Church ordered his clergymen to pray for victory. Reverend Koval instead replaced the word victory with peace in his prayer.
What's your opinion on the solution to the Ukraine war? Cut off the money. It's the only way you get them to the table.
It went against my conscience. I couldn't submit to this political pressure from the hierarchy.
That act got him defrocked from the Russian Orthodox Church. He now leads services at an old Orthodox church in Antalya, Turkey.
What's your opinion on the solution to the Ukraine war? Cut off the money. It's the only way you get them to the table.
Since his father led Melitopol Christian Church, Sergeyev says Russians sought out him and his family as a part of their strategy to subdue the Ukrainian people.
People get outside and take Ukrainian flag and try to stop the tanks and with Ukrainian flags, and they scream, "Go away, go back to your Russia." And when these guys came to our church, they thought that evangelical churches organize these things. And they said, "You have to stop them." And my father said, my father is the senior pastor. He said, I cannot, this is the will of the people.
Shortly afterward, the family learned of an abduction plot, and following the leading of the Holy Spirit, they fled the city. Today, Melitopol remains occupied by Russia. A large cross that once stood in front of the church is gone, and the building is now a Russian embassy of culture and youth.
There is no place for evangelical churches and other churches except Russian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate. All the rest should just disappear.